Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast.
Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast, where we celebrate stories of resilience. Today, we're talking with Cheri Madsen. I have known Cheri for a long time. She was the young kid back when I knew her back in Atlanta. And now she is, are you the old lady now? Is that how that works? I mean, you go from being the young kid to the old lady? She was 19 in Atlanta?
I'm pretty sure I'm like the oldest one on the track side on the team. So yeah.
So 44 years old. Not that you look like an old lady, not like you race like an old lady. The track trials are next week in Minneapolis. And so this will determine whether you make the team or not. Cheri, thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you join us. And look forward to hearing your story. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
So 16 years in between games, right? You were at the top of your game in Sydney in 2000.
Yes. Yeah, it's 16 years. Yeah. So that sounds like such a long time, but it just doesn't feel like it. But yeah.
And then you came back in Rio. So you were on top of your game. You won in Sydney, you won the 100 and the 400?
Yes.
100 and the 400. You held world records in the 100, the 200, and the 400. At one point, you said your 400 was 54.62. Is that right?
Yeah.
54.62. What's it like now? I mean, do you do things differently? Are there things that you did well back then that you don't do well now? Or are there things you do well now that you didn't do well back then?
Yes to both. I think one of the main differences now is just the way we're positioned in our racing chairs. Okay. And I think like that's probably the reason why, my times are still similar. I mean, I couldn't imagine like pushing like straight up like we used to do, because now we're more flat. So like just little things like that have changed, but essentially like equipment's, the same, that hasn't changed all that much. It's really been positioning.
So talk about what that means, the positioning. You're talking about flat. So what's flat versus
so like my legs, my knees are down a lot lower and my back's a lot flatter. But the position back in the day, we were more up at an angle. Like even if I look at old photos, I think I'm like, wow, how did we do that? Just doesn't seem like I was like supposed to be that way, because this is so natural the way we do it now.
Right, exactly. And so, but your times are relatively similar, which is helpful, right? I mean, you are now 44 years old. You're not 19 years old.
No, I'm not. Yeah, my times are similar. I pushed faster than my world record time. I mean, I'm nowhere near world record pace now, but I'm faster than what I personally was when I was 18.
What is world record for the 400? 400 is your big event, right?
Yeah. So the world record in that is 51.91. That's just flying. Yeah. Unbelievably fast.
51.91. Wow. And there are a fair number of people who are able to go that fast. Is it a deeper field now?
I think it's Tatiana. I want to say she still holds that record. And Manuela, I mean, she's smoking fast too, but I think Tatiana has that record.
So Tatiana McFadden and Manuela Schar are really the two people, because Tatiana was the one who back in London in 2012, they were looking for her to sweep all the gold medals from the 100 through the marathon. And Manuela, and then Tatiana had some blood clots, and Manuela filled that void. And now Tatiana, in a lot of ways, is looking up at Manuela. Where do you feel your preparation is putting you in the mix? I mean, do you feel comfortable in your hope of making the team next week?
I feel comfortable. I feel confident that I'll make the team. We really have to work on, medaling in Tokyo. But I mean, it's so hard to explain because I don't want to go in like overconfident. I know I put the work in, I've put the time in, and I don't want to overthink things and I don't want to stress out about it. That's really what, I don't want to get in my own head, and it's just different this time around. Like there's really like no pressure. I mean, I'm not sponsored by anyone, it's me just going out there and, giving the best that I can do on that day.
Are you more mature about that now than you were when you were a kid?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Back when when I was a kid, like I was traveling a lot with my mom. Right. And so, gosh, my mom, there's always, you don't want to disappoint, I don't really have anybody to disappoint now. Like, I have my own family and no matter what I do, they support me no matter what.
You're still okay. Your kids aren't giving you a hard time about, hey, mom, you didn't go fast enough?
No, my kids are not like that. Not at all. They're just really, they're completely opposite personalities. But like when I started racing again, they were a little bit younger and they just kind of have grown up with this now. And so like I definitely have missed things, but they've never given me a hard time about missing stuff. Like sometimes I feel sad, like when I miss a prom or like I miss a game, but they haven't really made me feel guilty like whatsoever.
So how did this timeline work? I want to build back up to the trials, but how did this timeline work? So you were on top of your game in 2000, and then what happened?
Well, okay, so I needed my shoulder repaired first of all, so I had to do rotator cuff surgery. So I knew I needed some work done on my shoulder, and I really kind of wanted to go out like on top, and I was the fastest in the world at the time. So I was like, oh, this is a good time. So, and I was already engaged. And so I knew that, I wanted to be married and I want to have a family, but I knew how to get my shoulder done. So that's what I did. I just kind of switched directions. And when I stopped racing, like when I tell you, like I never pushed again, I didn't. Like I went the whole 13 years doing nothing.
Doing nothing at all. So Nothing. So no fitness, no gym, no swimming, no pushing around in your everyday chair. I'm sure you did that to a certain extent.
Well, I did that to a certain extent, but like I had my kids and my grandma also moved in with me. And so I was helping take care of my grandma. She was diagnosed with cancer. And so we were going between, radiation and chemotherapy. And so there was just a lot of life happening. And so racing just really wasn't anything I was thinking about.
And so then what brought you back to racing? Why after 13 years did you decide, hey, I need to do this? Because what your kids at that point were, because your kids now are what, like 18 and 14 kind of thing?
17 and 15.
17 and 15. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so it was, oh my gosh, it was like May of like 2007. I don't know if you remember my little brother Mario, but he used to travel around with my mom and I a lot. And so my youngest, Milena, she had just turned a year old. And Mario says, when are you going to start racing again? And I'm like, you are so crazy. I'm like, I just had a baby. I'm like, that's like, what made you say that? And he was like, those were just some of the best memories I've ever had. He goes, I loved it. He goes, I just want the girls to experience that. He's like, I know you can still do it. And I just really kind of brushed him off. Like, I was just like, it just came out of nowhere, really. And
it's just kids, you're surviving, right? I mean, you're just barely getting day to day.
Yeah. It wasn't even a thought. And so December of that year, so December 23rd, 2007, Mario, my little brother, and my dad was killed in a train car accident, like right down the road from my house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, had, Mario not put that in my head, I don't know if I ever would have started racing again. And so this is kind of really, his words always kind of sat with me after that. I mean, it definitely took a lot of counseling to get through such a huge loss. That was the first person that anybody in my family had lost. And he was only 15 and he was just so young. So it took me a few years to, get over that hump and, but his words always kind of sat there. Like, the girls need to experience it. Those were his best memories.
Wow.
So it's really, he's with me, and I know he would be proud. And so he's a big reason why I started doing it again.
So that was 2007 though.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, I took
6 years.
Yeah, I was a mess. Yeah, I was an absolute mess. It was devastating. Mario and my mom lived next door to me. And so he was kind of at my house every day. And so just having such a loss like that, it was really hard to function.
I can only imagine. And not only did you lose your brother, you lost your father at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yep. And it was just, he had actually spent the night at my house the night before the accident, and we were wrapping Christmas gifts. And we stayed up late and we watched movies and just really kind of just enjoyed ourselves. Mario was just so much fun. And, everybody loved him. Just a really fun kid. And my dad got called into work on Christmas Day. And so he had just happened to call up here and say, hey, he's like, I got called into work. Why don't we spend today together and do their Christmas? Because him and my mom had been divorced now. They were divorced. So he picked Mario up, and I'm just sitting in the living room, and I see an ambulance go by the side of the house, in a window. And I was like, why is there an ambulance out here? It was weird. And just all of a sudden, my whole body just felt like something was so wrong. So I started calling their cell phones. They didn't answer. I called my mom. She was like, I don't know what's going on. She's like, somebody called and said that on their scanner, they heard there was a train collision on C Road, which is a mile away. And I was like, I'm hoping maybe they're just stopped down by the track and maybe they just can't get good cell reception. Sure. So I told Eric, I'm like, that's my husband. I'm like, you need to run down to the tracks. Just go down there. And the weather was bad. It was a sheet of ice out here. And Eric goes down to the tracks, and he comes back and he just says that they were just both gone. And there was just nothing in him. They just told him to come home and just be with the family.
And this was Christmas Day?
December 23rd.
23rd.
So 2 days before. Yep.
Wow. And so obviously, super, super emotional, but your brother planted this seed that the girls needed to experience you racing.
Yeah.
How did that process work? How did you get to the point, that first time where you thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to go blow the dust off my racing chair and get in and start honoring my brother?
Well, I was watching 2012 Paralympics. I was watching the games. And actually, I messaged Tatiana and I congratulated her and just, told her congratulations. And I had watched a lot of the track meet and or a lot of the Paralympics. I was like, wow, this is so cool. Wow, and I just thought I would just go for it. Like,
And
what's
did
the
you
word?
know Tatiana? Because you guys
No,
didn't overlap because
we did
you
not
finished
over,
in 2000.
we did not, we did not overlap. She was just so dominant. And I was like, dang, I'm like, this girl's amazing. I'm like, this is really cool. I was just, and it just kind of brought back those feelings of like winning and breaking world records. Like, I was just like, I kind of just started remembering and getting those feelings. I was like, oh, I know exactly how she feels right now. Like it was, it's just, it's a good place to be.
What does that feel like? What does it feel like to put yourself out there, to do that training, to break world records? What's that feeling like?
It's just, it's almost like a feeling of like, for me personally, it's like almost like a feeling of personal like satisfaction. Like I've worked and I've done it and it just feels good and it makes me happy. It's the only way I can explain it. It's one of the few things where, where I can put however amount of work I want into something and my end result is normally pretty good. So, yeah.
What did your girls say when you told them that you were going to do this?
They really didn't know what I actually did before I started doing this again. Like I was just mom. Like they had no clue. And when I started doing it, like, I'm like, okay, I want to go to Rio. We're all going to go to Rio. Like that was the big deal. And so they would just tell everybody, oh, we're going to watch my mom race in Rio. So that was the big thing. Well, then like the Zika virus, that was the big thing. And I was like, okay, you guys aren't going to Rio. Like you guys are staying home. And so they didn't go to Rio. And they did get in my small town, my community, they did put it at the local bar on like the big screen. And so they were able to watch it, to like live stream it. So like they did see me win my silver medal. So that was cool. They got that experience with like a whole bar crowd of people. So they definitely liked that.
Silver in the 400, right? So silver in the 400 to Tatiana, which the two of you were really dominant in that race. I mean, it was Tatiana, then it was you, then it was the Chinese.
Yeah, the real race was between me and the Chinese because you didn't know if they were going to come up on me or not. But yeah,
that last 100 can be rough. Yes,
it is the roughest part of the 4. Because I was honestly, after 2016, I was like, I just wanted to do it one time just to see if I could, right? I just wanted to see if I could do it. And I was not going to do it anymore. I just wanted to get one time. And since I didn't go to Rio, my kids, my family, I said, well, I'll do World Championships. It's in London. You guys can do London. And so we did London. And they got to see me medal there. And they love London. Like my youngest thinks she's going to live there when she grows up. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah, that was a really good experience for the girls. They loved it. They absolutely loved it.
And they got to experience it. What about you, like with your brother? So when you're there in Rio, are you thinking about him as you're there? Are you thinking about him as you're training prior to?
I think about him every day. He's always on my mind. Yeah.
Does that make you push that little bit harder? Does it make you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. It's just, I always feel him with me. He was such a huge part of my life. And it's even hard to imagine like how old he would be now, because to me, he's still this 15-year-old kid that just gave the best hugs. And so like, it's always just, it's hard. It still is hard.
Wow. And so then what about like winning that silver medal too? Was that one of those where you're like,
yes,
hey man, look, we did this. We did this. Yes. We got the girls to experience it.
That's exactly what I felt like. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I mean, I knew that I was training and doing it, but it all just came together. I mean, it was just, it was pretty amazing.
Were you surprised that it all came together, or did you believe that it would come together?
I believed.
Did you?
I mean, I was surprised, but I also believed because like what would I be doing there and doing all of this if it wasn't for something, right? Like I was put in this path in this direction. So like, yeah, like I just really felt like if I put in the work and, you know, gave my all, that it would work out. Like just medaling there, that was my goal. I just wanted to medal. That's it. And I mean, obviously I knew how dominant Tatiana was. Like she's just, it's just Tatiana, right? And so I'm like, who do I need to worry about after that? So that's what I did.
Who's racing for second place? I'm racing for second place.
That's what it was like. And I'm not going to lie about it because it's so true. And I know I'm a realist. What can I say?
But what a weird experience in a lot of ways too, right? Because the thing is, you came back to it through your brother. And I would imagine there's a part of you that you're coming back to it for your girls too, to show them, you know, you're the mother, right? You've got to teach them what to do. And the best way you can do that is through example. But then you hit this weird like time, you know, you hit the Zika virus, they got to go to London. Now you've got COVID-19 where nobody's going to Tokyo where all these protocols when you go to trials and everything.
Yeah.
What because you want them to experience it. So what's the, you know, sometimes, I mean, I imagine there are times that you just want to quit. Like what's the story that you keep telling yourself to keep yourself going?
Well, before COVID hit, right before it hit, we had bought the airline tickets and the hotel for Tokyo. Like there was just no doubt in my mind that I wasn't going. And so we bought tickets. And so now we're going to have to use them for, my niece is getting married in Mexico next year. So we're going to go to Mexico with that because nobody's allowed to go now. But funny enough, like after London, and then there was, I don't know, another world championships and then another world champ. I just kept going because my kids were like, how are you not going to do Tokyo? Like Tokyo is going to be the coolest place ever. And I was like, man, you guys think I could do another round? I mean, I'm getting older. And they're like, yeah, Mom, you definitely could do another games. So I was like, okay, like I'll keep going. And so like, I really just kind of kept going because they wanted to go to Tokyo and now they're not going to Tokyo. So here I am.
You better watch out because Paris is 2024.
I don't even know. Like, I would be like, how old would I be? I'm too old for that. Like, I'd be in my 50s. No.
It's 3 years from now. So you'd be
3 years from now, 24. I don't know. That's a lot. I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I don't want to. I don't want to.
You don't have to talk to me. You have to talk to your girls.
You know, they're at the point now where one's going off to college and the other one's just kind of hanging out with friends. Like they're not even upset they're not going to Tokyo at this point. They're not upset.
Yeah, but it might not be real for them yet. That once you start getting the build up going to the games and the excitement.
Maybe. I don't know. Like they haven't really discussed it. Like they weren't bummed out. They're like, ooh, Mexico will be fun. Like, I just think like what I do, like they know that I leave, they know that I compete. You know what I mean? They get all of that, but they're also like super like independent and they have their own sports. Like right now, my oldest is in Tulsa. She has a softball tournament. So like, you know, she's huge into sports and my youngest, she does cross country. So like they both just do their own thing. And, you know, and one thing that I can say is as much time as I've put into like training and racing, like they get I give them no slack. Like there's no excuses for you guys. Like I just don't do it. Like if they don't put the work in and they have a bad game or they don't do well, I'm like, well, what can you do? Like, how can you get better?
Is that harder for you? Because like you were talking about your oldest daughter just signed to play in college, right? To play college softball. And is it harder to be the spectator than it is to be the competitor?
Ooh, that's a good one. I've learned just to keep quiet because I know her personality. And like when she gets upset, like she wears it really well and like everybody knows. And so like I don't want to be the cause of that. And so like I just kind of sit back and like we'll talk later. Like I just try not to get in her head because I don't want to make her mad. And I know it's a crazy thing to say, but she just has to figure things out on her own. Like if she's up and she's struggling and she's striking out, and I'm just like, well, what can you, when she's done, I'm like, well, what can you do better? Like, should you go hit more? Like, what do you think?
Which is a great way to approach it, but I would imagine is really hard also as a parent. Like, you don't want to see your kid struggle. I mean, how is it that you can allow your kid to struggle?
I think just like with my own experiences, like I've struggled, I've lost. I mean, it just makes you who you are. I mean, if everything was just an automatic given and you never failed, how would you ever improve or get any better? So, I mean, I teach them that too. It's all part of it.
What do you think that they take from you?
Oh,
Because you think that they ignore you, right? But they probably are actually watching you.
I know they ignore me. Oh, I think they watch me. Like they know that they say I'm addicted to working out. Like they say I have an addictive personality. But they know I work hard. Like they know. I remember when I started doing a little more road stuff and the girls are like, oh, I'm going to ride our bikes with you. Yeah, they can't ride bikes with me. Like they're not fast enough. And they're like, yeah, we're never doing that again. Yeah. So, I mean, I think they know how fast I am and how hard I work. And so like, they're like, what's your workout today? I'm like, oh, do you want to go to the track and time me? They're like, oh, how long are you going to be there? I'm like an hour and a half, like just take some time out of your day. So, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I wish they were a little bit more involved, but it's okay.
Oh, I mean, they have to do their own thing. But you do have your youngest one, you said, is a cross-country runner, though, too. She doesn't come and join you on your track workouts? She
would do whatever she can not to get on that track. She'd rather run on the roads. She's like, she doesn't like going in circles, and she didn't want to do track. And her cross-country coach is also the track coach. He's like, oh, no, you're doing track. And I was like, well, I mean, she's improving, and that's the one great thing about track is it's not really, especially like, when she's just starting out, she was a freshman this year. I'm like, it's not about winning. It's about your personal improvements. And that's kind of the thing with her is like, oh, you were faster. Oh, well, look, and I'm trying to teach her like, and I know that I'm not good at tactics, but I'm like, why are you just going to let that girl stay behind you the whole way? Like step out. So with things like that I wish, she'll learn things like that as she goes, but yeah, but like she works hard. She gets up and she goes to practice and yeah, but I'm just letting her figure it out. She's probably most like me personality wise. And so I definitely don't want to tell her what to do.
Because you would not react well to that if someone
not well. Mm-mm. No, not at all. And so like I get her. Yeah.
So how does that work with your coach? You said you work with Wendy and Saul, Wendy Gumber and Mendoza. I just trust in what they're doing. I mean, Saul was super successful and I just really kind of buy into their program. I mean, so far done really great things with them. I'd first seen them. So when I first started racing again, it was nationals at San Antonio. And I went there in my old racing chair and I was pretty heavy. And so I was pretty much like on top of my frame, right? I wasn't really in it. I was on top of it. And
I actually qualified for Worlds that year at that meet. Yeah, I qualified. I was in shock. And Saul and Wendy was there, and so was Barry with Eagle. And Barry's like, you need a new chair. I'm like, yeah. And so Barry built me a frame, and Wendy's like, what can I help? What can I do to help you? And she's like, I really think, obviously, first and foremost was I needed to start losing some weight. I was probably 30 pounds heavier.
This is a big deal. I mean, this is strength to weight, right?
Yes, I was quite a bit bigger. And she's like, let's start working on that. And yeah, I did it. I got Barry's chair came. And so that was like, this was all happened within that summer. And I went to a World's Championships. It was in France. And so I think Eric and the girls were watching it, live streaming it, which how amazing is that in these times, right? You can watch whatever. So cool. And the commentator was talking about me and kind of talking about me in a negative way, saying like I was kind of out of my league and like, what? Like they were like, he was like in shock. He's like, I don't think that guy knew who you were. Or maybe he didn't, maybe your last name, like he didn't get it. Well, I remember I ended up, I think I won two bronze and a silver. I medaled in the 1, 2, and the 400 there. And the commentator's like, wow, I really need to eat my words. Like, because I was still fast. I just needed to be more fit. And that's just what we worked on, was losing weight and distance and getting fit.
Are you training differently now than you were back when you were younger?
Yes. When I was younger, I was probably doing a lot more sprinting. Mm-hmm. And working with like Wendy and Saul, like I'm definitely doing a lot more tempo training. And, obviously there's overspeed days and whatnot, but, I really kind of got to protect these shoulders.
So you're not doing all that ballistic sprinting where it's just full out. And the tempo, can you describe what tempo is, what tempo training is?
So like how we do our tempo training, it's like keeping my heart rate at like 80%. It doesn't really matter my speed. It's just keeping my body at like a nice level, heart rate. And then it's like, we'll do pickups to try to bump up my heart rate. And, he says it's all going to transition and work out. So I believe Saul because that's what he did.
Well, it's good to have this faith and it's good to have somebody on your team.
Exactly. Yes.
But it's also, they're not with you every day. They're down in San Antonio. They're down in Texas somewhere, right? And you're in Nebraska.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I talk to them all the time, actually. Yeah. We have a really good relationship. And one of the crazy things with this whole COVID thing is Zoom. Like now I work out with them like twice a week, like on my roller, just doing overspeed work. And, we definitely change like techniques and, we're able to see each other. And all this time, all these years training, like we never did that. I mean, I would send them videos, but nothing like this. So this has been kind of cool.
Right. So you can put your phone up on a tripod or whatever and get into your chair on your rollers, which is effectively like a stationary bike. And you can do all of your work, which is where a lot of where your improvements happen, where you ingrain your stroke, where you're not getting that variety, where you can really work on the system, the cardiovascular system, as opposed to the muscular system. You can work on the muscular system as well. It's a little bit hard though, too, isn't it? Like effectively kind of being an outsider, because I mean, one of the best countries in the world in track is the University of Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're a dominant force. Like, they come rolling in and like, oof. Yeah. I mean, that's why it's really tough to kind of do anything, outside of my own lane. So I like my own lane. I like to be able to control my own race.
Tell the audience what you mean by that. I understand what you mean, but tell them what you mean by your own lane.
So if you do a sprint, you stay in your lane. Where if you do a distance, you kind of move around and there's tactics and, people talk and yeah, it gets a little more tactical and I'm not the best at that.
So you stick with 1, 2, and 4, which now they're not running the 200 anymore.
I wish they were, but yeah, it's unfortunate because that's one of my favorite events.
That was always my event of choice, was the 200. Just get up to speed quickly enough. Couldn't start quite as well, which in some ways it looks like you're sort of similar, right? In that that you start well, but you don't start great.
Yes.
And you accelerate really well. I mean, that was even like back to your early days, right? I mean, back to racing the 100 against Chantal, where she got you out of the start, but you were able to accelerate and get past her. Those 3 kind of phases of the race. You have the start, you have the acceleration, and then you have your top speed kind of thing, or at least approaching your top speed. And is that what you still do well?
Same. I'm still the same. Yes, I'm still the same. But the crazy thing now, especially with the 100, is I'm right around like 100 pounds, 100, 103. But these 100-meter sprinter now are like 80, 85 pounds. And so like I'm outweighing them by quite a bit. And so like I feel like everybody's off the line before me. But it's still that acceleration and that power and my top speed where I can get them. I can't afford to make a mistake in 100. Like I don't have enough room.
What are the mistakes that you can make in the 100, and how are you trying to avoid those?
So it's still my starts. Like I was in Arizona and both of my hands slipped off the starts, like both. And so like my whole first push, I just didn't go. My hand actually went through my wheel. I was like, oh, and so I takes off and I finished second. But I mean, I can't afford to make mistakes with somebody that's younger and faster and, they're coming up. I always said I wanted to get out of this before all these young girls start beating me. Like the time's coming. It's upon me.
So it's the start. Is there something that you can do now? Just looking at like some of these athletes who run like a really heavy front end or really heavy front wheel, because one of those things, sometimes it's hard to be patient. It's hard to be strong functionally. I mean, you want your strength to go into going forward, right? But when you're sprinting, you're thinking, okay, go fast, go fast, go fast, go fast. It's so easy to push a little bit harder with one side on one strokes, and then the front end is moving left. Then you overcorrect, and then the front end's moving right. And instead of going 100 meters, you're going 105 meters or whatever. Is this something that you're looking at and saying, okay, I need to take my experience and figure out how I can do this better?
Starts are something that, gosh, I've been working on them for years. It's just, I don't know, for me, like, so I am in like the 54 class and I push more like a 53. And maybe a lot of people aren't going to know what that means, but I'm sure you do.
Well, tell me what that means.
Like a 54 class, I have a lot more ab function. I don't. I have like hip flexors, and so that bumps me up to a 54 class. And so if you see all of us start, I still start more flat, and everybody's up higher, so they kind of got a little bit more of a jump on me.
And put all those big muscles into your chest and your body weight into the rings, because the hardest thing in being a wheelchair sprinter is getting the wheelchair moving, getting what we call getting out of the hole. And it literally is getting out of the hole to get the chair moving. So you start more flat, which is similar in some ways. Like one of the guys who I think starts really flat is like Brent Lakatos from Canada. Who's a T53 who doesn't have the torso, the stomach and back. And so what are you trying to do? What's your objective in starting flat and in starting that way versus the other athletes who seemingly have an advantage?
I just keep doing more starts. And I'm by myself. And so there's nobody there like with a gun or with a clap, or there's nobody actually starting me. So it's all in my head. So I just don't have that good reaction time either. So I mean, that's been one of the frustrating things about working on my own. So like when I'm out the track, I'm counting in my head, or, I really just want to keep my hands nice and tight. And trust me, Saul and Wendy, we have tried to have me come up and try to do that. But like I move my body before my arms. Like it's not one motion. Trust me, we've tried lots of things and I'm still faster just using my arms.
Just using your arms and using hand speed effectively. Yeah. So you have two choices, right? You have the strength, the brute strength of like a bench press kind of thing.
Yep.
Or you have the hand speed of like hitting the ring quickly. And that's what you choose to go through, is the hitting the ring quickly.
Yep. It's my only choice.
Why do you think that you accelerate so well? That's always been the important part of your race.
Yeah, I just always, and it surprises me that I still am, but I still do. Like I didn't lose any of that. Like I didn't lose any of that fast twitch. I still have it. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's just comes like really natural to me to have just that quick, fast twitch muscle.
It's just who you are.
Yeah, it's just how I'm genetically made up, because it's still there. Even when I was a little chubbier, it was still there. Like I was still quick.
Exactly. Now, have you connected with any of the people who were your contemporaries, like the contemporaries back in 2000, back in 1996? What have they said about you getting back on the track?
Louise thinks it's absolutely amazing, because I'll see Louise because she's a coach, Savage. So like I'll see Louise and she's like, I just can't believe you're still doing it. She's like, it's amazing. So she always gets really excited. Yeah, she loves it. So that's probably been like one of my biggest competitors. This is the thing with Louise, like I've never beat Louise. I've outbested times. We've done different time trials. But when it comes down to head, she was always just stronger. She had more power. She could always get me at the end. But she was just one of those people that was just, I always looked up to Louise. She was just, and she's still nice. And yeah.
It sounds like she was a competitor, but sort of a hero in some ways. And especially as you're doing this now, do you look to any of the previous competitors for inspiration?
Previous competitors.
I'm thinking of like Heinz Fry and people like, Heinz Fry was like,
like all the old
championships up until he was like 60 something, or he might still be in it. I don't know.
I haven't seen him. Well, it's really cool because like Saul's one of my coaches, right? So like he was a kind of a big deal back in the 90s and the 2000s, right? So it's like really cool. Like he's kind of training me. And we were friends back then, but now just to have a little piece of, his knowledge, it's really cool. So like
I really still getting in his racing chair.
He does a lot of hand cycling.
Okay.
Yeah. I go down there to train every once in a while, like twice a year. I'll go down there to do some training with them. Yeah. He does the hand cycle, and Wendy will get on her bike, and it's the only time I really have the opportunity to work with somebody else.
To actually get in a draft, which is a big thing. But if you're staying in your lane, you really don't have to worry about the draft too much.
Mm-mm. But it's all with Saul's, like, how can we get your top speed faster? Like, spin out around me. Like, I want head-to-head competition. So it's like mental.
Well, there's so many different parts of being successful as a competitor. Is that something that's changed? Do you feel mentally stronger now than you were as a kid? Or you were kind of a cocky kid too, so you might not have thought about some of the other things.
I will have to say, when I started racing again, I really just had to like talk to myself and be like, you're probably not going to be a world record holder, a gold medalist. Like, you just, because that was like a real issue. Like, wow, am I going to go back into a sport where I was once so dominant and, maybe not be competitive? Like, that was a big risk for me. Like, if that was something I wanted to do. But I thought, why not? I mean, Mario wanted me to do it. I might as well give it a shot. And there hasn't been like one major championship or worlds or where I haven't medaled. So like, I'm still a medalist to this day. So, I mean, there's a lot to be said with a lot of, work and time that I put in.
It's not like you're looking back right now on your career, because your career is still going. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, are you able to look at what you're doing, and what's the sense of gratification that you get out of, making the choice to go when you're 30 pounds overweight to somehow, Crisco your hips to get into your racing chair, which for people who don't know, a racing chair fits like as tightly as your jeans do. There is no room for anything else. So if you're 30 pounds heavier,
I have photos. It's quite funny. But I did it. I think it was just sheer like determination and will. Like, I'm doing it. Like, I think once I've set my mind to something, it's just, I'm doing it.
And so looking back on that decision and where you've come right now, what do you think? I mean, what does it say to you about the rest of your life? What does it say to you about the message you want to teach your children? All of those things.
Wow. The rest of my life, like, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I don't really know yet. Like, I think obviously a lot has to do with like with my kids and like what, they're going to do. And, that's always my main focus. I mean, I'm a mom first. I mean, quite honestly. So, I think, wow, my future, I don't know. Like, I'm going to see what happens after Tokyo, I don't know. Like, Wendy is always like, why wouldn't you go until you can no longer go? And I'm like, yeah, but like, when's that point? Like, when's the point where you can go until you can no longer go? Like, I don't know. I just don't know when that is. I do have like my collarbone, that, whatever, that SC joint that did pop out on me a few months back. And so like, this has been nagging me a little bit, but it doesn't bother me when I push. It's just certain movements that I do, like lifting weights. I'm probably not, where I want to be. But, when you're like in your 40s and I'm just transferring something I've done thousands of times and something pops, just like, when's it time?
But yet you're way more fit now than you could have been if you hadn't started this.
Oh yeah. But what's crazy, when I was heavier, I didn't realize I was heavier. Like, I didn't realize it. Like, I just thought I was still cute, and I was like, just living my life, eating everything I saw. And it wasn't like, I had no idea. No idea.
Meanwhile, you weren't burning any of those calories the way
Nothing.
you did before.
Like, I would bake, I would eat cake, like brownies. Like, I had no shame. I don't dare do that now. No way.
So do you have any expectations going into Tokyo? I mean, first you have to make the team, right? So there's a
team. I'm not going to lie, to make the team, it is going to be hard. I have Tatiana, I have Amanda, I have Jenna, I have Hannah Diedrich. Like, there's a lot of pretty solid, racers.
And you only get 3 spots per event, right?
Not necessarily. So like, no, the way like everything is so different now. It wasn't like it used to be. So like, it goes off of like a percentage of like a standard
to make the team.
Right. To make the team. So like, I could win an event, But if I'm so far off the standard and somebody in a different event maybe finishes second, but they're closer to a standard, they would get a slot before me.
Right. And this is where it's really confusing. And for our listeners, this is where it's confusing.
It's confusing for me. It's confusing for all of us.
That Cheri's not necessarily competing even against people in her own class or against wheelchair racers, but there are wheelchair racers, there are visually impaired athletes, there are cerebral palsy athletes who might use a wheelchair as well. There are amputees, both arm and leg, and it's all based on a formula with a qualifying standard and how close you come to that qualifying standard or how much you exceed that qualifying standard by at the trials, while also finishing in the top 3 in your event at the trials, that then puts you into this whole mix. So you can go through and do all of your events and you could conceivably win all of your events. You should have a pretty good chance that if you win all of your events, but you don't know for sure until all of the math is done. So each athlete is competing for a spot on the US Paralympic team with all of the other track athletes in all of the other events from the 100 through the 10,000, and so many different classifications. So that's what Cheri's saying that's so challenging right now.
Yeah, it is. It's that part is stressful. So that's why I'm not trying to focus on that. Like, I'm just going to do the best that I can do, and whatever happens, it happens. Like, I don't want to get in my own head. And sometimes like I do that and I'm like, oh, nope, I got to like refocus, and that's one of the good things is I'm staying with Wendy. And so Wendy will definitely keep me occupied. So like when I'm by myself sitting in a room, I just start thinking. I don't want to overthink things. So it'll be nice to, spend time with Wendy, and, she'll definitely take my mind off of things.
Well, it's the ultimate goal here, isn't it? As an athlete, that there are so many different things that are swirling around, whether it's the fans, whether it's COVID, whether it's being in a foreign country, the competitors, the conditions, whatever it is. And you can't control any of that stuff, but controlling whatever is just in front of you and your race. Are you better at that now than you used to be? Or were you better back then when in some ways you just didn't know what you didn't know?
Back then it's just, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so like what's been difficult for me and was losing my brother and having a family at home. Like I always somehow had this fear, like what if something bad happens and I'm not home? Like that was one of the things that I've had to be like, okay, I can't control anything. Like that's out of my control. So I have to just focus on this. That was definitely the hardest part for me, was just controlling and having what's in front of me now and not thinking about the what ifs. Like, what if this or what if that? And, Kathy Sellers, like my first trip overseas was really hard for me. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody on the team. My roommate was supposed to be Shirley Riley, but she was coming in late because I think she was nominated for an ESPY. So I was by myself in a foreign country, and I was a mess. Like I was crying. I was like, I just wanted to go home. That was a really rough trip for me. And Kathy's like, everything's fine. Just enjoy it. Like you're here. She's like, everything will be fine. She's like, quit focusing on something you have no control over. So that's kind of what I have to keep repeating to myself. Like you have no control over things. Just focus on what's in front of you.
All right. Well, that sounds like the best advice you could give yourself as you're approaching the games. Mm-hmm. It is the games. Your family won't be there. But is there anything that you're looking forward to in Tokyo other than competing?
Like we've just been told to really lower our expectations when it comes to these games.
Mm-hmm.
That we're basically going to be in a bubble, which I think for a lot of the athletes that did like London in 2012 with such a huge, audience and spectators and fans, I'm like, well, I did Atlanta and like my family was there. Like there was nobody in the stands. And so like, I don't need like a big, like hype crowd. You know what I mean? Like that's not, I've done the Olympic exhibition where there's been a ton of people. So I've had both experiences and, it's obviously it's different, but it's still, just got to do what I can do.
That's it. Well, Cheri, thank you so much for joining us, for taking us on your journey from being a kid who broke world records to then a mom who came back and is making the world record holders really nervous, which is great.
I don't know.
Like it's good fun. Well, good luck and thank you. Thanks a ton. I don't know that I'll actually see you next week when we're at trials, because I was just reading through my stuff and I am tier 3, you are tier 1, and there's not supposed to be any interaction whatsoever. So it is going to be a weird time, but we're lucky that we're moving in a much better direction, hopefully now. So
I think so. At least they're happy.
And thank you for heeding the words of your brother, that your kids need to experience this. And that to me, I think is one of the coolest parts, and probably I would imagine something that will give you strength as you continue into your 4th Paralympic Games.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks a ton. And to all of you, thank you for joining us. The greatest compliment you can pay us is to tell your friends, to say, hey, we've enjoyed this. Come check it out. This will be a podcast as well. So you can find us on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify. Please, if you like it, please like us, please subscribe. We'll continue to get you the best content that we can. So thank you very much.